My wife told me at the club, while holding her ex's hand. I have been sleeping with him for 4 months. I want a divorce. I beat her lover with a belt, froze our accounts, made her pay me alimony, and got her lover fired. I guess I should start from the beginning, though I still find it hard to believe we got to this point. I was in my office reviewing some contracts when my phone rang. It was Ismael, my lifelong friend, and from his tone I knew immediately that something was very wrong. "Lionel, brother, you need to hear this, but you are not going to like it at all," he told me. "With that voice you use, you have to deliver the worst possible news. Your wife is at the Esfera de Cristal. She is not alone." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach, but Ismael was not finished. "She is with Adrian, that ex-boyfriend from college she always mentioned, and brother, they are not exactly just talking." My blood turned to ice as Ismael described the scene to me. Beatriz, my wife of 5 years, the woman who shared my bed and my table, was practically on top of that guy right on the dance floor, moving against him as if it were her last night on earth. "It is not just that, Lionel," Ismael continued with a contained rage that broke my soul. "Nestor and Miriam are there laughing and clapping as if it were the show of the century, as if your humiliation were their personal entertainment." Those names hurt me more than any physical blow I had ever received in my days as a Marine, because Nestor had been my partner in the IT business, had eaten at my house dozens of times, had toasted at my wedding, and his wife Miriam had cried with happiness when Beatrice and I got married. Now they were there watching my marriage fall apart in public and celebrating it as if it were a personal victory. I cut the call, grabbed the keys to my truck, and drove like a madman towards the club, with my heart beating so hard I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. The traffic in Guadalajara had never seemed so slow. Every red light was torture. Every minute that passed was another moment where my dignity was being trampled in public. When I arrived at the Esfera de Cristal, the techno music hit me like a wall, but nothing had prepared me for what I saw. I entered the main dance floor. There was Beatriz, my wife, with her hand in Adrian's back pocket, kissing him with a passion she had not shown me in months, moving her hips against him while his hands explored her back as if it were his private territory. The image was burned into my retina like a red-hot iron, and for a moment I felt the floor open up under my feet. Nestor and Miriam were a few meters away with drinks in their hands and smiles that seemed crueler than any direct insult. As if my pain were their private amusement, as if years of friendship meant absolutely nothing. I approached slowly with that dangerous calm you learn when you have seen combat. And when Beatrice finally saw me, she did not show an ounce of shame or regret. "Lionel," she said to me with a coldness that chilled my blood. "What a coincidence to find you here." Her cynicism completely disarmed me, but what came next was the final blow. "I guess it is time we talked. I want a divorce. I have been seeing Adrian for 4 months, and, frankly, I am tired of pretending. For months. While I worked like a beast to maintain our home, while I planned surprises for our anniversary, while I believed we had a future together. Adrian looked at me with that arrogant smile of someone who thinks they have won a game I did not even know was being played. And in that moment I knew that my life, as I knew it, was over forever. What happened next still surprises me, because I had never considered myself a violent person outside of military service. The rage I felt in that moment was not just for the betrayal. It was for the public humiliation, for the casual way Beatrice had shattered my life as if it were a minor formality, and above all for Adrian's mocking smile, which clearly told me he thought he was untouchable. Without a second thought, I lunged at him and pushed him with such force that he crashed into the bar, spilling drinks everywhere while people screamed and moved away. "Do you feel like a big man stealing a married woman?" I shouted at him as I took off my belt, and before he could react, I gave him the first lash with the belt on his back that made him double over in pain. Beatrice started screaming like a madwoman. "Lionel, stop. You are crazy." But I was not listening to anyone anymore. I just saw red and continued hitting him with the belt while he pathetically tried to cover himself with his arms. The music stopped. The whole nightclub was watching us, and I kept whipping him as if he were a spoiled child who needed to learn a lesson his parents never taught him. Nestor tried to approach to stop me, but I gave him a look that made him back away immediately because he knew, after years of knowing me, that I was not someone to mess with when I was that angry. Security arrived running and pushed me out of the club, but I had already made my point. Lionel was not the type of man who stayed quiet when betrayed in such a vile way. Once outside, with my knuckles bleeding and my heart still pounding like a war drum, I took out my phone and dialed the number of attorney Ramon Castillo, my trusted lawyer. Ramon, I am sorry to bother you so late, but I need you to freeze all the bank accounts I share with Beatrice first thing tomorrow morning and prepare the most ruthless divorce papers you have ever drafted in your life. I told him as I walked to my truck, still trembling with adrenaline. Ramon, who had known me for years, did not ask unnecessary questions. He simply confirmed that he would have everything ready by Monday morning and that Beatrice was going to find herself in a legal war she did not expect. That same night, I called Gonzalo, my brother-in-arms from my days in the Marines, and explained the situation without getting into too many emotional details. I need you to come tomorrow with some of the guys and get all of Beatrice's things out of my house. But I want it to be clear that she is no longer welcome there, I told him. And Gonzalo, who had always been loyal to the death, answered me with that firm voice I would recognize anywhere. Count on it, brother. And if you want us to make the message clearer, we can arrange that too. The next day, while I was at the attorney's offices signing documents and planning my legal strategy, Gonzalo and 3 of his friends went to my house with trucks and took out absolutely everything that belonged to Beatrice, from her clothes to those stupid porcelain figurines she loved so much. But Gonzalo, who knew my pain better than anyone because he had been through a similar divorce, decided to add his personal touch. He let one of his friends urinate on Beatrice's wedding dress before putting it in a trash bag. Because according to his words, a dress that represented lies deserved no respect. When Beatrice arrived at the house that afternoon and found all her belongings piled up at the entrance as if it were common trash, the scream she let out was heard down the street. But that was nothing compared to what happened 3 days later, when her mother Dolores showed up at my door with tears in her eyes and trembling hands. Lionel, please, I need to talk to you, she told me with that dignity that had always characterized her, but also with a desperation that broke my heart because I had always respected that lady. Beatrice is pregnant, she dropped it like a bomb, and the divorce is going to completely destroy her. She does not have a stable job, she has nowhere to live, and you know I always considered you like a son. Her words hit me like a hammer because a pregnancy complicated everything, especially if the baby was mine. But at the same time it filled me with a renewed fury because it meant Beatrice had been playing with fire on multiple fronts. Dona Dolores, I replied with the respect she deserved, but with the steel firmness I had learned in the army. Your daughter made adult decisions when she decided to humiliate me publicly and destroy our marriage. Now she has to face the adult consequences. It was also not easy to maintain my resolve after learning about the pregnancy, but one thing is certain. I was not going to stop my war just because Beatrice had decided to complicate things even more. Attorney Ramon explained to me that paternity could be a legal issue if the baby turned out to be mine, but he also assured me that we had enormous advantages because the house, the business, and most of our assets were in my name from before the marriage, plus my official salary was strategically low for tax purposes, while my real earnings came from investments and contracts that Beatrice never knew existed. Lionel, this is going to sound cruel, but legally speaking, she is going to end up paying you alimony, not the other way around. Ramon told me with that shark-like smile that confirmed I had chosen the right lawyer for this battle. While we waited for the paternity test results, I decided it was time to settle the score with Nestor and Miriam, those 2 traitors who had turned my pain into their personal entertainment. Nestor had a medium-sized IT company that depended heavily on the maintenance contracts I had gotten him through my connections in Guadalajara's business sector, and Miriam ran a systems consulting firm that survived thanks to the clients I had recommended to them during years of friendship. One by one, I called each company, each contact, and with the most professional voice I could manage, I explained that I could no longer guarantee the quality of service that Nestor and Miriam provided due to irreconcilable differences in our professional standards. I was not lying, technically, because anyone who celebrates the destruction of a marriage definitely does not share my professional or personal standards. In a matter of 2 weeks, Nestor lost contracts worth more than 200,000 pesos, and when he tried to call me to beg me to reconsider my decision, I answered him with a coldness that surprised even myself. Nestor, when you decided to turn my humiliation into your personal amusement, you also decided to become my enemy. and I treat my enemies exactly as they deserve. I hung up before he could answer, and that same afternoon, I learned from other contacts that his company had lost crucial data from several clients because they did not have the proper technical support without my referrals. Adrian was even easier to destroy because he worked at a digital marketing company where I personally knew the CEO, a conservative guy who valued family stability very much and hated public scandals. A casual call, a business coffee where I mentioned in passing that one of his employees had been involved in unprofessional situations that could affect the company's image. And Adrian found himself without a job a week later, without even knowing exactly why he had been fired with so little explanation. The divorce process moved faster than I expected, mainly because attorney Ramon had played all our legal cards perfectly, and when the paternity test results came in, I felt a mixture of relief and bitter satisfaction. The baby was not mine, which meant my legal obligations were reduced to zero and my advantages multiplied exponentially. The expression on Beatrice's face when the judge determined that she would have to pay me 6,500 pesos monthly for 3 years as compensatory alimony was an image I will treasure forever, because the irony of the situation was so perfect it seemed like divine justice. "How is it possible that I have to pay you when you were the one who kicked me out of the house?" she shouted at her attorney. But the laws are clear. Since she had been the unfaithful one and I had pre-existing rights over the marital assets, plus my registered salary was lower than hers, the legal system worked in my favor relentlessly. Adrian, the great conqueror who had thought himself so clever by stealing a married woman, disappeared off the map as soon as he learned that the baby was not his and that Beatrice now came with a legal financial burden that he was not willing to assume. "I never signed up for this," he told her, according to what Ismael told me, who had run into him at a bar where Adrian was lamenting his luck as if he were the victim of this whole situation. Beatrice started missing work due to stress, the nausea of pregnancy, and the constant appointments with lawyers, until eventually she was fired for absenteeism, and when she tried to seek support from Nestor and Miriam, she found that her former accomplices no longer wanted anything to do with her because their own lives were falling apart and they associated her with their bad luck. "Lionel ruined our business because of you," Miriam told her as I later found out. "And now we cannot afford to be your friends anymore." The woman who 4 months ago felt so sure of herself, so powerful, humiliating me in public, was now alone, jobless, friendless, without the father of her baby, and on top of that legally obligated to pay me a monthly amount that she knew perfectly well she could not afford. I never imagined I would be telling this, but I need to get it out because what happened that night still seems surreal to me. It had been 8 months since the divorce was finalized. 8 months in which I had rebuilt my life in a way I never thought possible. Living in my house with my 3 rescued dogs, who gave me more loyalty in one day than Beatrice had given me in 5 years of marriage, and sharing my afternoons with Nuria, an incredible veterinarian I met when I took one of my dogs for a checkup, and who turned out to be everything Beatrice never was: genuine, affectionate with animals, and with such a refreshing honesty that sometimes I found it hard to believe women like that existed. Nuria knew my whole story. I had not hidden anything from her about the divorce, the betrayal, or the extreme measures I had taken to defend myself. And instead of judging me, she had hugged me and told me that any man who fought so fiercely for his dignity was exactly the kind of man she respected. That Thursday night, we were watching a movie on the couch with the dogs lying at our feet and a sense of peace I had not known in months. When the doorbell rang at 11:30 at night, Nuria looked at me strangely because we both knew that no one came at that hour without calling first. But when I opened the door, I was met with an image I will never forget. Beatrice, gaunt, with deep dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, holding a baby who could not be more than 2 months old and who clearly looked nothing like her, nor me, nor Adrian, but had the unmistakable features of someone else. "Lionel, please, I need you to listen to me," she told me with a broken voice that surprised me with how desperate it sounded, very different from the arrogant woman who had humiliated me in that nightclub. "I have nowhere to go. They kicked me out of the apartment I was renting. I have not had a job for 3 months, and the baby's father abandoned me when he found out I was pregnant." The baby was crying with that intensity that only newborns can achieve. And for a moment, I felt a pang of pity, not for Beatrice, but for that innocent creature who had had the bad luck to be born in the middle of the chaos her mother had created. And what do you want me to do about it? I asked her with a coldness that came naturally, because after everything that had happened, after all the nights I had cried with rage and humiliation, I felt absolutely nothing for this woman who had so casually destroyed my life. I need money, Lionel, just until I get on my feet, until I find a job. I cannot go on like this, she begged me as she rocked the baby trying to calm him. But then her tone changed, and the manipulative Beatrice I knew so well appeared. Besides, part of this is your fault too. If you had not been so controlling, so cold, I never would have sought affection elsewhere. You pushed me into Adrian's arms with your attitude. Those words were like throwing gasoline on a fire I thought was extinguished. Because after all these months, after having rebuilt my life and found real happiness, this woman had the nerve to show up at my door to blame me for her own destructive decisions. Really? I replied with a dangerous calm I recognized from my darkest days. After humiliating me publicly, cheating on me for months, taking another man to my bed, now you come to tell me that I am to blame for your decisions. Nuria appeared behind me, and although she said nothing, her presence reminded me of all the good I had now, all that I had gained by getting rid of Beatrice forever. Look, Lionel, Beatrice continued with that arrogance that had never completely left her. I know you have money. I know the business is doing well, and frankly, I think you owe me at least financial help after how you destroyed my reputation and my friendships, after you indirectly caused me to lose my job. The audacity of her words left me breathless for a moment, because it was incredible that after everything she had done, after betraying me in the most vile way possible, she still believed she had the right to ask me for something. You know what, Beatrice? I said as I began to close the door slowly. Your problems stopped being mine the day you decided to get into another man's bed, and they are definitely not my responsibility now that you have decided to continue making stupid decisions with a baby you do not even know whose it is. The baby continued to cry, and for a second I saw in Beatrice's eyes a flash of real desperation, but it was too late to awaken any compassion in me. You are a heartless monster, she shouted at me as I finished closing the door. Someday you are going to pay for all the damage you have done to me by leaving me on the street with a baby. I closed the door with a definitive sound that echoed throughout the house. I put the deadbolt on and turned to Nuria, who hugged me without asking questions because she understood perfectly that some battles do not allow for half measures. That night, as I listened to Beatrice's last desperate screams from the street before she finally walked away, I felt completely at peace with my decisions, because I had learned that misplaced compassion is just disguised weakness, and that some people need to face the full consequences of their actions to understand the damage they have caused. I went back to the couch with Nuria and my dogs. We resumed the movie where we had paused it, and for the first time in years, I felt completely free from the ghost of my past, knowing that Beatrice would have to learn to live in the world she herself had created, without my help, without my compassion, and definitely without my forgiveness.